I'm probably going to get kicked off your show forever for saying this, and I will also be kicked out of the cloud club for saying this. But I actually think that long term, you shouldn't focus on a cloud career. You should focus on a career that includes cloud, because that's where things are going to be.
Interesting.
Don't be a cloud networking engineer. Be a networking engineer that knows cloud really well. Don't be a cloud developer. Be a developer that understands how to push your applications into the cloud. If you talk to most people that are in the cloud, that's how they came in. I'm Tracy Wallace. I am the Director of Content Development for INE, which is a training company. We are predominantly a training company that does video-based training. We also do assessments. We've got some certification exams. I've been in training and IT training for somewhere between 25 and 30 years. Not always full-time. I did a fair bit of bouncing back and forth between training and actually having a real job, but don't tell any of my coworkers I said that. It's one of those things. I've been in IT for, well, we'll say well over 30 years, and we're going to leave it at that.
No.
I started my first professional IT job was actually programming some stuff in Fortran. So for those of you that don't know what that is, look it up on like some historical site. Actually, it's funny because there's still apparently active Fortran. I haven't touched it in. I keep wanting to go back, but I'm not going to go back. But no, development has always sort of been my passion. I worked several years as core development, but I was fortunate in that I kind of honestly accidentally found my way into training, and that's been the bulk of what I've done over my career. And it's one of those things where it's like just helping people. And at the end of the day, right? If you're teaching, you're helping people, and there's tremendous just satisfaction from that. In the last couple of years, I've been moving more towards the management side and just putting it all together and hopefully keeping things out of the way so that the folks that are creating the content get to do that and don't have to worry so much about all of the administrative stuff, but still get to have my hand in it, still get to be around IT. I'm going through some data science content right now that's just amazing. So I know it's kind of a roundabout way of introducing myself, but I've been in the industry for a long time. I've been in training for a good part of that, but I've done development, database stuff, and a lot of cloud, which I actually got into from the developer side, and hopefully we'll talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Let's actually kind of unpack that a little bit more. Now that we kind of know your origin story there.
Lucrative film deals, both origin stories.
What made you want to get started? And next question will be, what made you want to learn cloud?
Great questions, both. There's two things. One, when I was a kid, and my parents were really slick about this, and I didn't even really fully appreciate it until probably relatively recently, how much they kind of injected technology into the things that I played with. I had these things in building, not just building blocks, but robot building block things, and they got a couple different computers, and I was I don't know, a couple years after 10, I started playing around on a Texas Instruments TI 994A, and I programmed my first basic program that was two incredibly well designed. They were poorly designed spaceships blowing each other up. That was what my first programming experience was. But the funny thing is, I'll never forget in university last summer of university, and I was taking a summer session to graduate. My child was going to be born. I had a pager in case my wife went into labor, and I took a landscape architecture course. And I swear there's a point to this. I took it as a blow-off course. No offense to landscape architects. I actually gained tremendous respect for the profession. Great professor. And he said, you know what? You need to think about what you want to do in life. And you need to write it down. And I didn't write it down, but I did think about it. And what I want to do is I want to create stuff. And that's what I've always wanted to do. And so IT is this way that you can create stuff. And it doesn't matter if you're programming or you're putting together a network, and you've got the racks that you somehow have convinced your significant other belong in your household, which I haven't. But you get to build stuff and take it apart and build it again, right? And that's just so fascinating to me. And I stumbled into training and I get to teach people how to build stuff, which is fantastic. And then, how did I get into cloud? All right, well, see, I came up on the Microsoft side. I started in Visual Basic, and I will fight anyone that has a problem with that. No, not really. I don't fight anyone. But, it was great. It was this way I could create these visual applications, and this was in the mid-90s. You hadn't seen it before. I'd done other programming, but it was not this. And so I sort of came up with that, and then that morphed into .NET. When .NET came out, it just blew me away. And then around the late mid 2000s, Microsoft came out with this thing called Azure. And what Azure was when it came out was pretty much just a playground for developers. It's like, hey, you're building this .NET stuff for the web. How about you just deploy it over here? We're going to make it really easy. It's going to tie into Visual Studio. And we're like, okay, cool. It's a cloud. Now, I'd actually worked on Amazon stuff without even realizing I was working on Amazon stuff with the little project I'd done when we were linking up with their API. But I really kind of went into Azure and I just sort of grew up with it. And I was really fortunate in one sense in that I kind of caught that wave really early and just stayed with it. And really over the next several years, really became fully entrenched. And it kind of fits with where I like to be and I like to build stuff. And, there's nothing like saying right now, I'm not going to do this because it would interrupt things. But right now I could say, hold on a second. And I could open up my browser and within 30 seconds, I could have a new Ubuntu box running and doing stuff with it. Right. And then in another minute, I could have a Docker container running on that. And now I've got something. And that just fascinated me about the cloud, that I've got this window to build in this environment that is effectively for me limitless. Not free, as anybody who's ever worked in the cloud will tell you. There is that mistake you made. Companies, that mistake can often lead to 5 or 6 figures in a month. That is kind of an oops.
Oh, gosh.
In my case, it was a few $100s, but you forget and you leave something running for a little bit. But aside from that, and being very careful, and you learn very quickly to set up lots of budget alerts to really tell you when you're doing something stupid. But like literally just being able to get in there and saying, you know what? I don't want to have to spin up a rack. No offense to people with racks in their houses. I just want to build stuff. And for me and for like the mentality that I have, that's really what's fascinating to me about the cloud, is it gives us that ability. And not just me. Like, it's funny because I was thinking about this. My son is a software engineer, I think staff software engineer somewhere. He's kind of really, yes, I'm proud of it. But I don't think he's ever deployed anything to production or probably even test that wasn't just deployed to the cloud. Right, because that's just the way every company is worked with now on the dev team. It just makes sense in their environment. And again, there's other environments where it doesn't. There's still certainly environments where you're deploying to on-prem, but just that possibility that you have with the cloud.
The amount of power you have within a few keystrokes and a few mouse clicks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, there's really important stuff, right? I mean, that's the great side. But I make a little light of the dangers, right? Because you can rack up a build really quickly, and that's both personal when you're playing around, but also companies, right? And you see that. What you typically see with the cycle of a company is going, "Ooh, cloud, let's just push everything to cloud because we can build whatever we want to whatever scale." All true. And then they get the bill. And then they think, well, maybe those racks that are sitting there in our data centers still have a little bit of value. So
exactly. Now, a lot of people will come to me and say, I want to get into cloud computing. And my response is always, great. What do you want to do in the cloud? The cloud is such a broad term. There's several different job roles within the niche. Do you mind kind of breaking down what some of these different job roles are in the cloud field that one might aspire to go after?
So I'm probably going to get kicked off your show forever for saying this, and I will also be kicked out of the cloud club for saying this. But I actually think that long term, you shouldn't focus on a cloud career. You should focus on a career that includes cloud, because that's where things are going to be.
Interesting.
There are certain things that are very specifically cloud, but take development, and I didn't ask my son for permission, so I'm not going to go too far, but I think I can say this. He deploys to Kubernetes. If you're a developer nowadays, it's highly likely that you have something to do with CI/CD and you have something to do with containers, and you probably either are in or are looking to go into Kubernetes. All of those technologies are probably endpointing into the cloud, but not necessarily. Right? You're still an application developer. You're still building applications. It's just those applications end up getting ported to the cloud. You're still, if you're an infrastructure person, you're still building that Kubernetes infrastructure. A lot of that's going to be simplified in the cloud. Also not really super honest to say anything is simple when it comes to Kubernetes, but you know what I mean. Right?
I was going to say.
But, networking, right? Or even if you're compute, hey, I manage operating systems. Well, at the operating system level, managing that in the cloud is not really significantly different than managing it on premises, right? And particularly, let's say you're a system administrator, right? And you're not networking. I'll get to that in a second. The way you administer a system Active Directory, if it's hosted on-prem, it's almost certainly hosted in a virtual machine, right? Or it's hosted up in the cloud, which is also a virtual machine. Networking is interesting. And a couple things with that. I think it's the most interesting aspect of cloud. One of the two biggest areas that I think is very, very much going to be hybrid going forward. Hybrid networking is immensely important. And what's interesting is, I work for a company that built itself on networking. It built itself on Cisco networking. I work with some people that scare me how smart they are. But what's kind of funny to me is that they all overthink cloud. They're used to doing everything the hard way. And I'm like, well, I'll just click a button and I got a network, dude. What's the problem here, right?
Yeah.
But you need to connect all that up, right? And also what I found is the people that actually transition, once they get over the fact that it's a lot easier than they think it's going to be, and they get over the fact that they don't have this thing called a VLAN, that gets a lot of people upset. But you've got other approaches to it. They tend to be the people that actually get into cloud the fastest and easiest, is the folks that have that networking background. So, yes, you could be, and there are jobs out there, and don't get me wrong, there are jobs out there right now where you are specifically cloud oriented. I just think if you're looking at a career that's 10 or 20 years that you want to be in the field, that it's better to think about things from a functional level that include cloud. Like, personally, I would say don't be a cloud networking engineer. Be a networking engineer that knows cloud really well.
Yeah.
Don't be a cloud developer. Be a developer that understands how to push your applications into the cloud. And that's kind of where I see the value. And if you talk to most people that are in the cloud, that's how they came in.
That's some really solid advice. When I talk to people about the cloud, like I simplify it down for them. I'm like, people think the cloud is this big, glorious thing in the sky. We have these big data banks up in the sky, but the cloud is just someone else's data center. It's really, in all honesty, the same thing as you're going to have on-prem, but it's just located remotely in someone else's location. And like you said, a lot of the things and services you're standing up are going to be virtually the same. We had the pandemic a few years ago where everything just got pushed to the cloud. But now things are starting to migrate back down. We don't need to spend all that money to have it pushed up in the data center, in the cloud. And we're starting to see this more hybrid role environment. And I think that's going to be the people who can adapt to those hybrid roles where you're working with some systems in your local data center and maybe just a few critical systems up in the cloud. That's really the way of the future, I feel.
100%. And, going on that, and I know I'm probably going to people that are like, hey, how do I get my career in the cloud? And I'm saying, you're not going to have a career in the cloud. You are, but it's going to be part of a broader career. And that's the way it should be. When the cloud really started catching on, right, in kind of the mid 2010s, like there were and there are still jobs for this, but there were so many, like if you were a cloud architect, right, you were making bank and you could go and get whatever job you wanted because everybody's moving to the cloud. Everything has to be different in the cloud. And so we're going to have this great career field for cloud architect. Now that there's still value in it and that still exists, but exactly what you said, it doesn't exist in a vacuum and it shouldn't exist in the vacuum. Companies that are going to do this well, the companies that are going to succeed, that are going to need to hire you are going to be exactly what you said. They're going to be the people that understand the cost and the savings that are the cloud, right? You need flexible performance, you need capacity where you can't plan on what that capacity is. That's where the cloud can be truly not only great in terms of time savings to get you up and running, but also it can save you money. On the other hand, exactly like you said, if you're running these solid, steady processes and you know what, you've got a SAN that's only at like 50% capacity,
right?
Why would you not use that, right? Or why would you not, when you're buying something new, you should be looking at the cost benefit. And that is something that I think if you're going to say, okay, what's the one pure cloud direction that I think you could go is probably FinOps, cloud financial operations, right? Because those are the people that look at those details. Those are the people that keep the companies from getting those 5 or 6 figure surprises, right? And and that's the funny thing too. The truth is, as long as you've got good governance, as long as you've got good FinOps and you're keeping track of that, you're not going to get those, right? Because the cloud providers are going to tell you every single cost there is. People talk about surprise costs. It's because you didn't read it. And that's where I think the FinOps people can be really helpful.
You're saying I can't just go and stand up 50, GPU instances and walk away and, not pay an arm and a leg?
I was going to say, you can do that. It's just that last little qualifier you put in there that makes that not possible. Yeah, you're going to pay some money for that.
Exactly.
You do need the people that can control that. And don't get me wrong. Like it probably sounds like I'm saying, now don't bother with cloud. 100% that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the cloud it's absolutely here. It's going to continue to grow. It's going to be interesting with all of the AI that's coming out. Today, you can't do the AI that's available without cloud.
Absolutely.
There's not many companies that have that capacity now to run AI and to run those models. So we're going to have cloud. You're going to need to understand it. You're going to need to have good governance, which isn't really quite FinOps, but I kind of put that together, and saying, hey, put the right guardrails up so we're using this in a way that's financially makes sense for us. But, if you're networking, if you're application development, if you're cybersecurity, cloud is 100% going to be part of it, and it should be part of it, right? But, just like you said, and like I said, look, if a virtual machine is running and it's got a public endpoint, it doesn't matter if that public endpoint is sitting in your data center or that public endpoint's in the cloud. You still need to protect it.
What I'm taking away from this as someone who's looking to advance their career and build useful skills is to be truly successful in just the tech field in general. I not only need to understand what's going on in premise, but I also should know how that relates to the cloud sector and to be that, journeyman, that jack of all trades where I can be diverse, whether we're going to stand this up in premise or tomorrow I can go move it to the cloud. That's really where people that have those diverse skills are really going to thrive. Am I understanding it correctly?
100%.
Hey, before we continue, let's take a moment here to appreciate the simpler things that just make daily life better. As some of you may know, I'm in the middle of building a new studio. And one thing that was really important to me when designing this space was to make it a comfortable, functional place that I would want to spend time in and be productive. That's why when MyOrchestree sent me some of their products for my new studio, I really got excited. Imagine this. opening a beautifully designed, eco-friendly package. As you lift the lid, you are greeted by a handwritten card, adding a personal touch right from the start. Inside, each organizer and stand is nestled safely in natural filler material, ensuring it reaches you in the perfect condition. MyOrchestree focuses on crafting premium, eco-friendly workspace accessories from natural materials like solid oak and real cork. The product line includes items like felt desk mats, monitor stands, desk organizers, and other accessories designed to enhance and personalize your workspace. And it's not just about the aesthetics. These pieces are all about functionality, integrating seamlessly into your day-to-day work, making your space a reflection of a eco-conscious craftsmanship. So if you're looking to upgrade your workspace with style and sustainability in mind, make sure and check out MyOrchestree. There's a link down in the description below. Okay, now back to this week's episode.
For somebody looking to build their career, they're going to be like, oh, great. This guy that's been in it for 30 years is telling me that in order to be successful, I have to do all the stuff I was going to do anyways and also do the cloud. Sort of. I sort of am. But the cloud is a lot easier than on-prem. It just is. Because the cloud provider is making, Microsoft and AWS are kind of big, right? They're making a lot of money making it easy on us, right? If it wasn't easy, they wouldn't be making the money. So yes, you should learn the cloud. I am saying you want to do both, but kind of my biggest recommendation, the biggest point of advice I have for anybody is it kind of goes back to that landscape architecture class. You need to figure out what you want to do. You need to figure out what makes you satisfied, right? Because we spend too much of our time at work. You like networking, you like cybersecurity, that's going to be natural. And it's going to be really easy to get that to flow into cloud. Because again, cloud is easier. I would suggest, learning cloud alongside. And again, let's say you're looking to break in, right? Get one of the entry-level cloud certifications. Get the AZ900 from Microsoft. I wouldn't say the certified cloud practitioner from AWS, because that's honestly, it's a little bit too easy. It is, in all my years of taking certs, the only cert I've ever aced, like nothing wrong on it. But,
It also feels like everyone has that cert.
Yeah, because it's kind of easy to get. Get the what is it? It's a terrible name. Solution Architect Associate for AWS, right? Or there's an equivalent for if you want to go Google. Google's amazing. They've got great stuff. Generally speaking, if you're looking to get into a career, you're looking to learn cloud, great to learn multiple clouds. But if you're going to learn one, I would say either AWS or Azure, because they're just bigger. Like if you're looking for a career opportunity, it's going to be easier to find a career opportunity there, unless, there's certain niches. Like for now, data science, like data scientists love Google Cloud. If that's your niche, learn Google Cloud. You're probably already doing it. Figure out what you love, figure out what area of IT you love, and learn a little bit of cloud, because cloud's going to make that easier. And it's going to make you, exactly like you said, it's going to make you so much more shiny and so much more attractive to a prospective employer, right? Say, hey, yeah, I am a cybersecurity. I've got, I'm gonna be local here. I've got my EJPT, but I also have, a cloud cert. So I can help you not just with cybersecurity, but I know you've got a cloud, and that's a huge area of concern right now for people, right? Or networking or anything else. But yeah, figure out what you love, get that, and don't think cloud or not cloud. Think of cloud as exactly what you said. Cloud is just somebody else's computer, right? You're still connecting to a data center. It's just you don't own the data center. And so those concepts are still valid. It's just done slightly differently. And again, in my opinion, and I can say this because I'm pretty tied into the cloud, it's just easier.
We've talked about some of the different roles and, how people should think when they're wanting to enter the field. But the second question I always get is, can you jump straight into a higher level job that deals with cloud? Or do you need to build up some experience, maybe working at a help desk or maybe some sort of entry level networking job?
Every once in a while on social media, I see these posts from people that are like, didn't have a job 2 years ago and now I make $200,000. I don't know any of these people. I think there's a couple of things about that. First of all, I think if you make that kind of jump, if you're saying, you know what, I'm going to go from having no IT experience to I'm going to be a cloud architect in 2 years. Could you cert out and could you probably find someone to pay you to do that? Yeah, but probably in 3 years' time or 4 years' time, you're going to be miserable because you didn't get that foundation. And I know that's not what people want to hear, right? Look, it's easy for me to say that because I've kind of grown up in it. But I mean, realistically, and I've seen so many people start their career, and you should start your career at the entry level because you get experience that when you're an architect, right? When you become a system architect or when you become an application architect, you're going to remember those lessons that you learned when you were at Helpdesk or when you were a SOC analyst level 1, right? Or when you were a network administrator just starting out. And by the way, those are not terrible paying jobs. I think you transitioned into IT after a career elsewhere. And where did you start? I'm going to turn it right back on you. You started out, you probably didn't start out as a network architect, right?
Before IT, I was a bulldozer operator. I was miserable at it. Like I did not want, don't get me wrong, the pay was great. I was making really good money, but I worked my butt off and it was a really mind-numbing job. And so I decided to get into IT and I knew I had to get into that entry level position to get that help desk position. So I started out as an IT support specialist answering password reset emails, creating AD accounts, doing the basics. And while I was there, I tried to sink my teeth into everything that they would let me. I tried to learn as much as I can. Whatever they were doing, something that I didn't know about, I was the fly on the wall, just like, ooh, what does that do? What does that do? And probably they got a little annoyed at me after a while, but for the most part, they were more than willing to take me under their wing. And by the time I left that organization, I was designing the complete IT infrastructure for all our brand new hotels we were building. And all those skills I learned while I was at that organization, that's how I was able to level up so quickly in my career.
By the way, I had one nugget that I was going to bring to this podcast, and you just completely took it from me. That was the biggest thing you can do in your career is make sure people know that you want to learn, that you want to do the new stuff, that you want to be involved, because that's the only way you learn. Because you know what? Here's the thing. Everybody's busy. If you get that SOC analyst position, or if you get that, network admin position, and then you just start doing that, and that's what you do, that's what you're going to be doing, right? Nobody's going to come up to your desk and nobody's going to recognize your innate genius and go, you know what, Tracy, I know you've been sitting there and you've been banging out basically the same code block for the last 3 years, but I see you're really smart and we're going to take and put you as a cloud architect, right? That's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Every opportunity that I've had, I mean, I've been fortunate, and I understand that, and don't get me wrong, but I've also made sure that people knew that I was willing and not just willing, but really interested in doing the new stuff. And you show that, and people are going to be happy to let you do that. There's a guy I work with now, and like, I'm not going to say his name because I don't want anyone poaching him. I say that in jest. I just haven't, I would have cleared it with him before. Like, he's exactly that right now. He's in that part of his career. He's starting out, but he is going to have an amazing career because he's looking for all of the new things that he can do. I will go and have these conversations with him, and he makes me think about better ways to do stuff. And he's just starting his career, but he's going to go because exactly what you said, because it's about getting your foot in the door, but then making sure that the people that have the technical projects understand that you are going to be valuable to them. Again, nobody's going to come and ask you that, right? I imagine nobody came and said to you, "Hey, bearded IT guy, we have this new thing. Again, we really have never talked to you, but how about you come over here and do some really technical stuff?"
Exactly.
Right? That's not how that happens.
You got to show the initiative.
You do, and the funny thing is, right? There's a lot of hero stories in our industry that are honestly a little bit damaging, right? Because it makes it seem like it's like, oh, I'm going to go to cloud and it's going to let me skip all of these steps. And I wish I could tell you could, but you can't. That's not how you're going to start your career, and it's not how you should start your career.
Yes, you're correct. In these hero stories, like, I like to tell my story because I like to try to motivate people. But a lot of people think, oh, I can do that. And then they get frustrated that they can't. A lot of times in these stories, you don't hear about the level of grit and the level of determination that goes into this.
Yeah.
Trying to level up my career, this was a around the clock 24/7 thing. I will 100% admit it. Like, there was nights where, like, I pretty much came home from work, gave the kids a kiss to bed, and then sat down in front of the books and studied, or dug into my home lab or whatever. And it was a constant grind. And I'm going to share another story that hopefully isn't too much of a hero story.
But by the way, I don't consider yours a hero story. I consider yours a legitimate story because right away, because you worked for it. It wasn't, hey,
absolutely,
those silly things like, oh, look, PHP bought me this Maserati. That's the stuff that's unhelpful. But please give us another story. It's your podcast. Might as well.
But, if I broke it down to its simplest form, when, I tell people I went from Helpdesk to a director of network operation in 3 years. And people hear that and think that's a hero story. But the first 2 years was at that first job, just working as hard as I can. Then I got a job at an ISP working in their NOC, just a basic NOC technician. During my 90 days, this is a great organization I work for. They said, here's the NOC in all its glory. Go learn, go figure it out. And so they left me to my devices for like the first 30 days. Just here's logins. Don't break stuff. And so I made it my mission to figure out every system, to log in and touch every system, to look at configs. There was a time I had configs printed out on my wall, and I would break them down into the different config sections. And I took total ownership of that network operations center, and it didn't go unnoticed. So I come up to my 90-day review, as a 90-day probation. I get pulled into the office and I'm kind of nervous. I think I've been doing a good job, but this is a big step. Long story short, I got offered the position as director of network operation, overseeing all of network operation for this ISP, because my level of detail was so unique. I was creating documentation. I was doing all this hard work, and it got recognized, and I just been running with it ever since. I'm 3 years into this position now and loving every minute of it. I tell that story to hopefully motivate some of the people that, it's a lot of hard work, but it will come around to pay off.
There's a couple things with that. And then I've got a not so much hard work, but fun story that I'm going to share with you that's a little bit similar. The important thing there is, and there's kind of the joke, hey, this one trick that people don't want you to know. Well, you just shared it. The trick is you work your tail off. That's how you succeed in IT. And I think the cool thing about IT is that there is that opportunity. You got to work. And I've seen it in so many careers. And yeah, your rise was really fast. But if you came in and you just said, yeah, I started and 3 months later I was director of the NOC.
Yeah.
That would be a hero story I'd be a little worried about, right? But it's kind of funny you're talking about that. One of my favorite jobs that I've ever had, out of high school, I got a job and I was working and again I'm gonna date myself here, mainframe terminal repair. And my boss was like, "Yeah, so we've got this stock room full of these terminals, and for anybody old, VT100s or VT60s, if you know what that is, do not admit that to anyone." But he's like, "So I've got this stock room full of these things that aren't working, and so here's some schematics." And I want you to pull them apart and cannibalize them and build as many that can work. Because everyone that comes out of here that works is one more than we had. And we were supporting 2 offsites with this. And it was so much fun. Now, there was one time I cleared out the entire office because I put a capacitor in backwards. Never put a capacitor in backwards, kids. Bad things happen.
What's a capacitor? Would it kill you to read?
But aside from that, and the funny thing is, to this day, like I same thing, man. I was thrown in the deep end and I worked my tail off. And, I would leave these things testing and, leave at 9:00 at night, come back in at 9:00 in the morning and, and all this stuff. But, those are the things that you carry with you, right? And, I bet you're never going to forget that you may not have these config files printed out on your walls, but you're never going to forget that, right? And that's going to be a driving force going forward, right? And I will never forget taking a paperclip, like learning how incredibly useful a paperclip is in fixing computer hardware. I would use it to short the communications, transmit and receive on the little. I don't want to go too deep into it, and then I would also use one to trap a key down so it would just run all night, and I would make sure it was. Anyways, I still remember this. This was like 25 years ago, and those are experiences that helped me get to the next level. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, I did not rise as meteorically as you rose, but it's the same kind of thing. You have to put in the work, and what IT gives you, what cloud gives you, is it gives you the ability to say, if you're going to put that work in, you get the foot in the door and you can just that's when it's unlimited, right? That's where you can grow and you can really do whatever you want. And then one other thing, and it goes back to that, there was no way that you were going to do that if you didn't love it. Oh, yeah. Is that right? Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. 100%.
You were putting in this incredible amount of work, but if you don't love it, you can't do it and you can't sustain it, and you're going to be miserable. That's the whole thing. Like I used to coach soccer, and I started out coaching accidentally. Everything I started doing was accidentally, but I started coaching little 4-year-olds soccer. And at 4-year-olds, you don't coach them soccer. You don't coach them tactics. What you do is you get them to love it. Right. That's the thing at the young age, because some of the kids, that's all they'll do, and they won't be that interested. But the kids that are really serious about it, right, that are going to put in the hard time when they're in their teens, late teens, college, maybe even professional, they're not going to do that if they don't love it. And I think that's universal. You have to find what you love. And, cloud gives you this incredibly broad opportunity to find what you love. If you know you love IT, then cloud's great for that, right? Again, please don't be just cloud. Because 10 years from now, it's not going to be cloud. I don't know what it's going to be. Cloud will be part of the story, right? But it's not going to be the whole story. Don't limit yourself to that, right? Get in, learn the cloud, be inquisitive, break stuff. Don't break production, but and just grow, and you can grow at a pace. And your story again. And it's funny. I usually, when I say hero stories, I say that slightly negatively because I think they're misleading. Your story's not, right? It's you put in this incredible hard work. When I was programming Fortran, that's how I learned to type, because I would be given this job and it's like, hey, we need this model coded by tomorrow and you can go home when it's done. Right. And so if I learned to type fast and like really accurately, then I was getting out at 1 a.m. instead of 4 a.m. But I put that work in. I don't do a lot of 4 a.m. days anymore. Right. But that's still part of what got me to where I am. So, yeah, unfortunately, that's the trick. The trick is you got to work your tail off. Then, but you work your tail off.
I agree.
If you work your tail off, and you know cloud, you've got incredible opportunities. And I think probably more so than almost any other career field that you could think of, as far as, just getting that reward for the work, but you got to do the work, and you kind of have to start at the beginning.
So let's break this all down. You've decided on a career path. You've probably started studying for like your career certification that's going to help you get that first job. What's the next step people need to take to start getting through to landing those interviews and potentially getting offered a position?
There's a couple of things that you need to do. There's all kinds of back and forth in terms of the value of certifications. I think particularly starting out your career, certifications are valuable because they're going to show, particularly if you got the certification on your own, it's going to show potential employers that, you know what, you want this, right? You've put out the effort. As I said, I don't think you need to go and get your solution architect professional from AWS or your Microsoft certified Azure solution architect. You don't need that level to go get a job. You need something to show for it. You need to play around, and getting that first interview. And I'm going to be a little bit honest. I've been in the industry a long time, and it would be disingenuous for me to say, well, here's exactly how you do this, and here's how you get that first interview. Because when I got my first interview, it was a very different environment. But here's what I will tell you from the other side. Okay. If I'm talking to someone, if I'm looking at somebody's resume that's coming in, I'm looking for a couple of things. I'm looking for what skills do they have, right? What skills do they say they have? What certs do they have? And what's the general tone? And this one's really tough. What's the general tone that's coming off from a resume? Is it well organized? Is it efficient in terms of what I'm looking at? That's the first part, getting through that door. And I also know, again, full honesty, full disclosure, I know it's harder now because there's a lot of automated resume systems. And frankly, my resume is good enough that I don't have to worry about that at this point. I'm at that point in my career, right? But, there's lots of tools out there as well. There are ChatGPT or other generative AI. There's tools that you can use to help you improve your resume. But the other thing is, and this is, I see this work both ways, and it's absolutely critical. When you get that interview, make it a conversation. Be genuine. Of course, you're going to be nervous. And, I see that when I talk to people, when I interview people, because like I said, I'm generally on the other side of that now. I can tell most people are nervous, but you have to be able to that's almost one of the tests. Can you get past that nervousness, and can you still have a conversation? Because, at the end of the day, if I hire you, we're going to be working together. We have to be able to have a conversation. I have to be able to know that we can communicate.
100%.
And I think that communication skill is something that is critically valuable. And I've known some people that do great work helping people get in to the career field. And that's a big part of what they do, is they just help people to where they can have the conversation with a potential employer. And it also needs to be a conversation because every interview is a two-way street, right? And that's another thing that I cannot encourage people starting out enough. Don't be desperate to take the first thing that comes along, because if you are, you're probably going to get a very bad situation. Understand the companies that you're interviewing with. And I know, and it's easy to say from my position.
Do your research. And also have questions, but you don't have to have questions. And I will tell people that, and I've done this interview where it's like, okay, I have to go and research something about this company so I can ask some question to prove that I've researched. Like, no, research the company 100%, right? But have a conversation. If you're having that conversation, you'll probably have questions. You probably do have some questions. Absolutely.
Don't make them up. Don't ask a question in an interview just so that you can prove you asked a question. That's, to me, that's just...
No, 100%.
Develop some skills, go do searches, and you can get on LinkedIn and you can search LinkedIn for free. You can search Indeed, do some pretty simple searches. Do a search for network administrator, network engineer. Look at the skills that people are looking for, right? And this is where, honestly, this is where a little investment in cloud can be incredibly useful, right? Because I can go and spin up virtual machines in the cloud, and I can learn whatever I want. I want to learn as much Linux administration as I want. I can do that for really low cost, right? And I could do the same thing with Windows administration, all right? And so look for the skills, find the jobs that are out there that you're interested in. Again, ideally look for things that, from a career perspective, you want to start wherever you can start to an extent without taking a job that you're desperate for. Yeah. Look for things that interest you, and that's the other thing. If you find something that interests you, it's going to actually be a lot more natural for you to get that job, right? Because you're going to go in and you're going to have a conversation.
100%.
And going to be something where you come out and was like, wow, that was a really cool conversation. I could really work at that place because this is something I'm really interested in. This is something that I'm passionate about.
And the people interviewing you are going to notice that.
100%.
I'm now on the flip side as well. I'm doing the interviews for the Network Operations Center. One thing I always like to do is when I conclude my videos, I'm like, hey, you want a tour of the NOC? And I'll give them the grand tour. I'll take them through. And you can see some people are just kind of twiddling their thumbs. They're like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then you can see the people that are like picking their jaws up off the floor, like, oh, what's that? And what's that? And I'm like, I like you. I'm bringing you back for another interview. You know what I mean? You can tell the people that are passionate and who want to learn.
Yeah.
Every organization is different. Every hiring manager is different. But when I conduct my interviews, I'd say 75 to 80% of the interview, I'm looking how you can communicate and how well you're going to get along with me and my team. Only about like 20%, 25% is I actually care about if you know how to do what you need to do, because I can teach you those skills. If you have like just a general framework on how things work, yep, I can teach you the actual skills. What I can't teach you is to be a team player and get along with the rest of the organization. This is really important, I think, when applying for smaller organizations with a smaller, tight-knit team. A lot of times those larger organizations more focused on the skills, I feel. But when you're when you're just getting started, some of those smaller organizations are easier to go for. And your personality is what's going to carry you and really help you get that job.
100%. It's funny because very similar when I'm on the interviewer side. The only other thing that I look for is I want to talk to you about how much you love to learn, right? Because exactly what you said, as long as we can communicate, as long as it's clear that we can communicate, and as long as you are excited about learning and excited about learning what we're doing, then you're going to be fine. And, there are, I read interview after interview, whether it's smaller organizations or Fortune 500 organizations, and they're like, we're going to teach anyone we hire, we're going to end up teaching them most of what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Certainly at that beginning phase of your career, right? And again, the large organizations may have more of a kind of a machine process to it, but I've read things from, fairly officers in larger companies. They're like, yeah, we're going to end up teaching them everything anyways, and we need to make sure they can learn.
Exactly.
Right. And, the truth is that was, to me, coming out of university, the biggest thing I got out of university was learning how to learn, because I kind of skated through high school, if I'm being honest. I never really tried that hard, but I had to try in university, and I learned how to learn. And it's still, many years later, key to me being able to do what I do. And that's going to be true for anybody. So make sure you can communicate. It's a two-way. Every interview is a two-way interview. Remember that, and be part of a conversation. Be interested in what the job is, and be interested in learning. Those are the things. Those are the things that are going to get you in the door once you get the interview.
We've unpacked so many great, tips and nuggets of information here, and I'm sure we could talk for another couple hours. But as we start to land the plane here, what are some of your, for people who are like advancing their career and trying to learn new skills, what are some, bits of advice you have for them?
Here's my number one piece of advice. And this comes from a professional training career, is you need two things. You need to have knowledge and you need to have skills. You can't have just one. And anytime you're learning something, you need the knowledge because you need a contextual framework in which to put the skills that you're learning. But you also need the skills because otherwise that knowledge is frankly kind of useless in most cases, right?
Right.
And there's a couple things. And look, I work for a training company. We make money by offering training, and there are different ways that you can like skill up, though, right? You can go and you can get information off of free resources. There's this thing. Here's a tip. There's this thing called YouTube that's out there. Some people love it. Okay. No, but I mean, I obviously think probably people know that. Yes, you can go and do that. I'm not, honestly, I'm not disciplined enough to do that. I can't go, hey, I want to learn how to be a Node.js developer. Let me just go and start putting together a playlist. I'll go to ChatGPT and say, put together a playlist, and I'll go and do that. I'm not that disciplined. I'm just, I'm not. And so, training, and there's a whole range of different things. You're disciplined enough to do that. Fantastic. And there's all kinds of things like that. You've got your starting point. You're getting a feel for what you like. Pursue that. Pursue the learning in that. I'm not at the beginning of my career. Okay. But I'm still pursuing things. And I'm pursuing things that are interesting to me, but also 5 years from now, like if I decide I want to change up a little bit, I've got that. But the way I'm doing that is I'm getting conceptual knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm learning the concepts behind things. I want to talk about knowledge, right? It's like, okay, what is a virtual machine, for example, right? What does that mean? What do I get? How does a virtual machine host it? How does that work? How does it communicate, right? But then you have the skill that says, hey, I actually kind of want to create this thing. And you need to do both of those. And that, again, comes back full circle. And you have to be careful with it. You have to be super disciplined with it. The cloud providers, for example, have a lot of free tier services. They don't give full. And again, please, anybody listening to this, biggest thing I want to tell you, be really careful when you're in the cloud. It's phenomenal, right? But if you're starting in your career, a couple $100 is probably going to hurt a lot if you accidentally leave that, 10 GPU machine on for a week. Find a way to get the conceptual knowledge. Make sure you get the hands-on skills, though, right? Because there's a couple things that's going to do for you. Is A, it's going to absolutely solidify that knowledge, right? You've got the concepts, you've got the anchor points for the skills, you've got the skills that are going to complement that knowledge. And A, that means you're going to have the confidence to do these things, but it also means that you're going to know what you want to do next, and you're going to be able to have a conversation with whoever you're talking to, and they're going to know it. Because I can tell, and I'm sure you can tell, when I'm talking to somebody that's actually put their hands on something, and it doesn't have to be exactly what we're doing with it, right? And it's not going to be. If I'm hiring someone and there's a cloud element to it, and there probably will be, I want someone who's touched the cloud, who's actually gone in there, and I can have a conversation about, hey, how does this work in the Azure portal or the AWS console, right? Or what's a cloud shell? How did you do this? And somebody could go and start riffing. It's like, hey, I wanted to deploy this, and CloudFormation didn't quite do it. So I went and I looked and I found this thing called Terraform, and I'll be like, yeah, I know Terraform, right? But you have to be able to do that. And a lot of that can be done low cost. A lot of environments, company I work for, we've got, a lab environment. And again, I'm not here to show, we're here to have a conversation, but it's representative, right? You can go out and you say, look, you can do it all on your own. Or you can pay a company that's going to curate that, give you that experience and give you that combination. But you have to go and learn. Get that get that entry point, right? Get that starting position. Whether it's working in a back, or you wouldn't be working in a back room putting together mainframe terminals, but whatever the equivalent of that is now, right? or like you said, you just got in the knock and you were given the things. Get that starting point and start learning right away. Start figuring out what you want to do, because it's going to be the knowledge. Once you get your foot in the door, it's going to be your knowledge and your demonstrated ability to learn that are going to fuel your career in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah.
I like development, and that's the things that I picked. You're networking, right? So, you could probably tell me a lot more about BGP than I could tell you about BGP.
I'm going to need a few more beers before that one. Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
But I don't know if hopefully that answers the question. But that to me, if you boil it down, get your foot in the door, figure out what you want, and do everything you can to learn that. And you're going to have to put that work in on yourself. Oh, one other quick thing, and you said it and I said it a little bit. Try to get involved in projects at work that go beyond the scope of your job description.
Yes.
Again, the huge thing. And it's so many opportunities, because I had a conversation with someone. I said, hey, that sounds really cool. You have something like that. Let me know how I can help you, because I would love to be a part of that. And that's it. That's what people want, right? You're starting a project. You want people that want to do this.
Yeah.
Be that person.
Such powerful information there. And I really thank you for coming on the show and sharing all your wonderful wisdom. If people want to connect with you or find out more, or maybe even learn from you, hint, from a training platform, where can they find you?
I'm at ine.com. You can find me twallace at ine.com. And, I'll certainly share that. Love to talk to people. I'm on LinkedIn. I think I'm just Tracy Wallace on LinkedIn, and maybe Tracy Wallace with some append, but you kind of can't miss me, old guy. I do scroll Twitter, or X, I guess. I'm full disclosure. I don't generally add much to it because I just don't find myself having that much to say. But I would love to talk to people, particularly LinkedIn. And, look, come take a look at, I'll shill just a little bit here. Come take a look at INE. I work for a company that I think does some really great things. And so, we're all about helping you skill up, and I'd love to help you out. But also, like I said, get in touch with me. Find me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to share my email address. I'll find my actual full LinkedIn. I should know that off the top of my head, but
I'll make sure and put it in the show notes or the description.
I was going to say, I have had people contact me from having been on your show before. So
that's so cool.
Thank you for making me internet famous. I appreciate that. I'm really fortunate in that my career has been really spent helping people get the skills that they need to really take their career in the direction they want to go. Or maybe in some cases, every once in a while, I'll find out, hey, you know what? Not what I want to do. And that's okay. It's better to find out earlier rather than later.
Oh, absolutely.
Please get in touch with me. Let's have a conversation. I will give you whatever advice that I can. Take it for what you will, but it will be genuine. It will hopefully be useful, but it will be genuine.
Well, I really hope all of you enjoyed this week's episode, and until next time, keep learning.
Keep learning. Thank you, Dakota.